Chapter 10. The Belvedere Divan. Beginning day had reduced night to a thin smokiness when Spade sat up. At his side, Bridget O'Shaughnessy's soft breathing had the regularity of utter sleep. Spade was quiet, leaving bed and bedroom and shutting the bedroom door. He dressed in the bathroom. Then he examined the sleeping girl's clothes, took a flat brass key from the pocket of her coat, and went out. He went to the coronet, letting himself into the building and into her apartment with the key. To the eye there was nothing furtive about his going in. He entered boldly and directly. To the ear his going in was almost unnoticeable. He made as little sound as might be. In the girl's apartment he switched on all the lights. He searched the place from wall to wall. His eyes and thick fingers moved without apparent haste, and without ever lingering or fumbling or going back, from 1 inch of their fields to the next, probing, scrutinizing, testing with expert certainty. Every drawer, cupboard, cubbyhole, box, bag, trunk, locked or unlocked, was opened and its contents subjected to examination by eyes and fingers. Every piece of clothing was tested by hands that felt for telltale bulges and ears that listened for the crinkle of paper between pressing fingers. He stripped the bed of bedclothes. He looked under rugs and at the underside of each piece of furniture. He pulled down blinds to see that nothing had been rolled up in them for concealment. He leaned through windows to see that nothing hung below them on the outside. He poked with a fork into powder and cream jars on the dressing table. He held atomizers and bottles up against the light. He examined dishes and pans and food containers. He emptied the garbage can on spread sheets of newspaper. He opened the top of the flush box in the bathroom, drained the box, and peered down into it. He examined and tested the metal screens over the drains of bathtub, washbowl, sink, and laundry tub. He did not find the black bird. He found nothing that seemed to have any connection with the black bird. The only piece of writing he found was a week-old receipt for the month's apartment rent Bridget O'Shaughnessy had paid. The only thing he found that interested him enough to delay his search while he looked at it was a double handful of rather fine jewelry in a polychrome box in a locked dressing table drawer. When he had finished, he made and drank a cup of coffee. Then he unlocked the kitchen window, scarred the edge of its lock a little with his pocket knife, opened the window over a fire escape, got his hat and overcoat from the settee in the living room, and left the apartment as he had come. On his way home, he stopped at a store that was being opened by a puffy-eyed, shivering plump grocer and bought oranges, eggs, rolls, butter, and cream. Spade went quietly into his apartment, but before he had shut the corridor door behind him, Bridget O'Shaughnessy cried, "Who is that?" Young Spade bearing breakfast. "Oh, you frightened me." The bedroom door he had shut was open. The girl sat on the side of the bed, trembling, with her right hand out of sight under a pillow. Spade put his packages on the kitchen table and went into the bedroom. He sat on the bed beside the girl, kissed her smooth shoulder, and said, "I wanted to see if that kid was still on the job and to get stuff for breakfast." "Is he?" "No." She sighed and leaned against him. "I awakened and you weren't here, and then I heard someone coming in. I was terrified." Spade combed her red hair back from her face with his fingers and said, "I'm sorry, Angel. I thought you'd sleep through it." "Did you have that gun under your pillow all night?" "No. You know I didn't. I jumped up and got it when I was frightened." He cooked breakfast and slipped the flat brass key into her coat pocket again while she bathed and dressed. She came out of the bathroom whistling "En Cuba." "Shall I make the bed?" she asked. "That'd be swell. The eggs need a couple of minutes more." Their breakfast was on the table when she returned to the kitchen. They sat where they had sat the night before and ate heartily. "Now about the bird?" Spade suggested presently as they ate. She put her fork down and looked at him. She drew her eyebrows together and made her mouth small and tight. "You can't ask me to talk about that this morning of all mornings," she protested. "I don't want to, and I won't. It's a stubborn damned hussy," he said sadly and put a piece of roll into his mouth. The youth who had shadowed Spade was not in sight when Spade and Bridget O'Shaughnessy crossed the sidewalk to the waiting taxicab. The taxicab was not followed. Neither the youth nor another loiterer was visible in the vicinity of the coronet when the taxicab arrived there. Bridget O'Shaughnessy would not let Spade go in with her. It's bad enough to be coming home in evening dress at this hour without bringing company. I hope I don't meet anybody. Dinner tonight? Yes. They kissed. She went into the coronet. He told the chauffeur, Hotel Belvedere. When he reached the Belvedere, he saw the youth who had shadowed him sitting in the lobby on a divan from which the elevators could be seen. Apparently the youth was reading a newspaper. At the desk, Spade learned that Cairo was not in. He frowned and pinched his lower lip. Points of yellow light began to dance in his eyes. Thanks, he said softly to the clerk and turned away. Sauntering, he crossed the lobby to the divan from which the elevators could be seen and sat down beside. Not more than a foot from the young man who was apparently reading a newspaper. The young man did not look up from his newspaper. Seen at this scant distance, he seemed certainly less than 20 years old. His features were small, in keeping with his stature, and regular. His skin was very fair. The whiteness of his cheeks was as little blurred by any considerable growth of beard as by the glow of blood. His clothing was neither new nor of more than ordinary quality, but it, and his manner of wearing it, was marked by a hard masculine neatness. Spade asked casually, "Where is he?" while shaking tobacco down into a brown paper curved to catch it. The boy lowered his paper and looked around, moving with a purposeful sort of slowness, as of a more natural swiftness restrained. He looked with small hazel eyes under somewhat long curling lashes at Spade's chest. He said, in a voice as colorless and composed and cold as his young face, "What? Where is he?" Spade was busy with his cigarette. "Who?" "The fairy." The hazel eyes gaze went up Spade's chest to the knot of his maroon tie and rested there. "What do you think you're doing, Jack?" the boy demanded. "Kidding me? I'll tell you when I am." Spade licked his cigarette and smiled amiably at the boy. "New York, aren't you?" The boy stared at Spade's tie and did not speak. Spade nodded as if the boy had said yes and asked, "Balmain's Rush." The boy stared at Spade's tie for a moment longer, then raised his newspaper and returned his attention to it. "Shove off," he said from the side of his mouth. Spade lighted his cigarette, leaned back comfortably on the divan, and spoke with good-natured carelessness. "You'll have to talk to me before you're through. Sonny, some of you will, and you can tell G. I said so." The boy put his paper down quickly and faced Spade, staring at his necktie with bleak hazel eyes. The boy's small hands were spread flat over his belly. "Keep asking for it, and you're going to get it," he said. "Plenty." His voice was low and flat and menacing. "I told you to shove off." "Shove off." Spade waited until a bespectacled pudgy man and a thin-legged blonde girl had passed out of hearing. Then he chuckled and said, "That would go over Big Back on 7th Avenue. But you're not in Romeville now. You're in my burg." He inhaled cigarette smoke and blew it out in a long pale cloud. "Well, where is he?" The boy spoke 2 words, the first a short guttural verb, the second you. "People lose teeth talking like that." Spade's voice was still amiable, though his face had become wooden. "If you want to hang around, you'll be polite." The boy repeated his 2 words. Spade dropped his cigarette into a tall stone jar beside the divan and, with a lifted hand, caught the attention of a man who had been standing at an end of the cigar stand for several minutes. The man nodded and came towards them. He was a middle-aged man of medium height, round and sallow of face, compactly built, tidily dressed in dark clothes. "Hello, Sam," he said as he came up. "Hello, Luke." They shook hands and Luke said, "Say, that's too bad about Miles." A bad break." Spade jerked his head to indicate the boy on the divan beside him. "What do you let these cheap gunmen hang out in your lobby for, with their tools bulging their clothes?" "Yes." Luke examined the boy with crafty brown eyes set in a suddenly hard face. "What do you want here?" he asked. The boy stood up. Spade stood up. The boy looked at the 2 men at their neckties, from one to the other. Luke's necktie was black. The boy looked like a schoolboy standing in front of them. Luke said, "Well, if you don't want anything, beat it and don't come back." The boy said, "I won't forget you guys," and went out. They watched him go out. Spade took off his hat and wiped his damp forehead with a handkerchief. The hotel detective asked, "What is it?" Damned if I know, Spade replied. I just happened to spot him. Know anything about Joel Cairo, 635? Oh, that one. The hotel detective leered. How long's he been here? 4 days. This is the 5th. What about him? Search me, Sam. I got nothing against him but his looks. Find out if he came in last night? Try to, the hotel detective promised and went away. Spade sat on the divan until he returned. No, Luke reported, he didn't sleep in his room. What is it? Nothing. Come clean. You know I'll keep my clam shut, but if there's anything wrong we ought to know about it so's we can collect our bill. Nothing like that, Spade assured him. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a little work for him. I'd tell you if he was wrong. You'd better. Want me to kind of keep an eye on him? Thanks, Luke. It wouldn't hurt. You can't know too much about the men you're working for these days. It was 21 minutes past 11 by the clock over the elevator doors when Joel Cairo came in from the street. His forehead was bandaged. His clothes had the limp unfreshness of too many hours consecutive wear. His face was pasty, with sagging mouth and eyelids. Spade met him in front of the desk. Good morning, Spade said easily. Cairo drew his tired body up straight, and the drooping lines of his face tightened. Good morning, he responded without enthusiasm. There was a pause. Spade said, let's go someplace where we can talk. Cairo raised his chin. Please excuse me, he said. Our conversations in private have not been such that I am anxious to continue them. Pardon my speaking bluntly, but it is the truth. You mean last night? Spade made an impatient gesture with head and hands. What in hell else could I do? I thought you'd see that. If you pick a fight with her, or let her pick one with you, I've got to throw in with her. I don't know where that damned bird is. You don't. She does. How in hell are we going to get it if I don't play along with her? Cairo hesitated, said dubiously, You have always, I must say, a smooth explanation ready. Spade scowled. What do you want me to do? Learn to stutter? Well, we can talk over here. He led the way to the divan. When they were seated, he asked, Dundee take you down to the hall? Yes. How long did they work on you? Until a very little while ago, and very much against my will. Pain and indignation were mixed in Cairo's face and voice. I shall certainly take the matter up with the Consulate General of Greece and with an attorney. Go ahead and see what it gets you. What did you let the police shake out of you? There was prim satisfaction in Cairo's smile. Not a single thing. I adhered to the course you indicated earlier in your rooms. His smile went away. Though I certainly wished you had devised a more reasonable story. I felt decidedly ridiculous repeating it. Spade grinned mockingly. Sure, he said, but its goofiness is what makes it good. You sure you didn't give them anything? You may rely upon it, Mr. Spade, I did not. Spade drummed with his fingers on the leather seat between them. You'll be hearing from Dundee again. Stay dummied up on him, and you'll be all right. Don't worry about the story's goofiness. A sensible one would have had us all in the cooler. He rose to his feet. You'll want sleep if you've been standing up under a police storm all night. See you later. Effie Perrine was saying no, not yet, into the telephone when Spade entered his outer office. She looked around at him, and her lips shaped a silent word, Iva. He shook his head. Yes, I'll have him call you as soon as he comes in, she said aloud and replaced the receiver on its prong. That's the 3rd time she's called up this morning, she told Spade. He made an impatient growling noise. The girl moved her brown eyes to indicate the inner office. Your Miss O'Shaughnessy's in there. She's been waiting since a few minutes after 9. Spade nodded as if he had expected that and asked, What else? Sergeant Paulhouse called up. He didn't leave any message. Get him for me. And G called up. Spade's eyes brightened. He asked, Who? G, that's what he said. Her air of personal indifference to the subject was flawless. When I told him you weren't in, he said, When he comes in, will you please tell him that, G? Who got his message, phoned, and will phone again? Spade worked his lips together as if tasting something he liked. Thanks, darling, he said. See if you can get Tom Paulhouse. He opened the inner door and went into his private office, pulling the door to behind him. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, dressed as on her first visit to the office, rose from a chair beside his desk and came quickly towards him. Somebody has been in my apartment, she explained. It is all upside down, every which way. He seemed moderately surprised. Anything taken? I don't think so. I don't know. I was afraid to stay. I changed as fast as I could and came down here. Oh, you must have let that boy follow you there. Spade shook his head. No, Angel. He took an early copy of an afternoon paper from his pocket, opened it, and showed her a quarter-column headed Scream Routes burglar. A young woman named Caroline Beale, who lived alone in a Sutter Street apartment, had been awakened at 4 that morning by the sound of somebody moving in her bedroom. She had screamed. The mover had run away. 2 other women who lived alone in the same building had discovered, later in the morning, signs of the burglars having visited their apartments. Nothing had been taken from any of the 3. That's where I shook him, Spade explained. I went into that building and ducked out the back door. That's why all 3 were women who lived alone. He tried the apartments that had women's names in the vestibule register, hunting for you under an alias. But he was watching your place when we were there, she objected. Spade shrugged. There's no reason to think he's working alone. Or maybe he went to Sutter Street after he had begun to think you were going to stay all night in my place. There are a lot of maybes, but I didn't lead him to the coronet. She was not satisfied. But he found it, or somebody did. Sure. He frowned at her feet. I wonder if it could have been Cairo. He wasn't at his hotel all night, didn't get in till a few minutes ago. He told me he had been standing up under a police grilling all night. I wonder. He turned, opened the door, and asked Effie Perrine, "Got Tom yet?" "He's not in." "I'll try again in a few minutes." "Thanks." Spade shut the door and faced Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She looked at him with cloudy eyes. "You want to see Joe this morning?" she asked. "Yes." She hesitated. "Why? Why?" He smiled down at her. "Because, my own true love, I've got to keep in some sort of touch with all the loose ends of this dizzy affair if I'm ever going to make heads or tails of it." He put an arm around her shoulders and led her over to his swivel chair. He kissed the tip of her nose lightly and set her down in the chair. He sat on the desk in front of her. He said, "Now we've got to find a new home for you, haven't we?" She nodded with emphasis. "I won't go back there." He patted the desk beside his thighs and made a thoughtful face. "I think I've got it," he said presently. "Wait a minute." He went into the outer office, shutting the door. Effie Perrine reached for the telephone, saying, "I'll try again." Afterwards, "Does your woman's intuition still tell you that she's a Madonna or something?" She looked sharply up at him. "I still believe that no matter what kind of trouble she's gotten into, she's all right, if that's what you mean." "That's what I mean," he said. "Are you strong enough for her to give her a lift?" "How? Could you put her up for a few days?" "You mean at home?" "Yes. Her joint's been broken into. That's the second burglary she's had this week. It'd be better for her if she wasn't alone. It would help a lot if you could take her in." Effie Perrine leaned forward, asking earnestly, "Is she really in danger, Sam?" "I think she is." She scratched her lip with a fingernail. "That would scare Ma into a green hemorrhage. I'll have to tell her she's a surprise witness or something that you're keeping undercover till the last minute." "You're a darling," Spade said. "Better take her out there now. I'll get her key from her and bring whatever she needs over from her apartment. Let's see. You oughtn't to be seen leaving here together. You go home now. Take a taxi, but make sure you aren't followed. You probably won't be, but make sure. I'll send her out in another in a little while, making sure she isn't followed."